context, all we have to fill is the gap of expertise. And so once we have the expertise gap, then the in-house team should be better than the advanced team. And then at that point, you decouple and you let them go. So you want to make sure that you have a clear deadline for when you want to make that transition. And this is good for a couple reasons. One is because it sets expectations with them. They can also see the LTV and you can talk in terms of that. Let's say it's $6,000 a month. I'm committing to $36,000. All right, so like you're going to get that from me as long as you're not an idiot. But the real is that your team also knows that you're like, hey, we're 1 month down. We got to understand this stuff in 5 months. Hey, we're 2 months down. We got to understand this stuff in 4 months. And so it drives you towards the outcome of getting your team up to speed faster. Now you have that deadline, but what if your team's not as good as theirs by the time the deadline comes? Well, in my opinion, you either need to change the people or they're not teaching you everything that needs to happen. Because if they're low-skilled people are doing better than your team, some who is a problem, either them or you. Let's assume that the people are right and maybe it's just a more complex platform, whatever. I keep going until our team matches theirs. Once our team matches theirs, then I drop it off. We downgrade it to a consulting agreement just for insurance. 1 or 2 months later, if we feel like we're not learning anything on the calls that we have from a consulting perspective, we cut it. And we do so amicably because we set that as the expectation. That's how I grew my YouTube. So now let's approach the same concept, but on a different platform. I didn't understand TikTok at all. I didn't use it. I wasn't on it. I actually had an agency reach out to me outbound, which is not common for me to accept that. But they said, listen, you do no work. So from a value perspective, the offer was, you already have enough content out there. I can repurpose it and make shorts out of it. And I was like, okay, sure. If you want to do all the work and involve me at nothing and just make content for me, sounds good. And so that's what they did. And they started getting traction with the short videos and we're like, okay, this stuff works. And then for me, my director of brand actually had a super deep history on short form content. And so normally I would have had that second phase where I would go for that premium agency, but that individual worked at a premium agency. And so I actually bought the SOPs automatically and we were able to massively scale our output on short content within 6 or so months of working with that original agency. And again, we're on good terms with the person in the agency. If you set the expectation up front, which is I want to learn from you and I want to be transparent about my intentions and I want to eventually bring this in-house because it's my belief that my team will be able to allocate more time to my thing and understand my brand better. And if they had your skills, they will be able to do more output at higher quality than you could ever do. You have to make a margin. I don't. I'm going to cover cost and get 5 times more output. This is what I believe has married the best parts of agency and the best part of building an enterprise and making a valuable business and avoided the agency trap that so many people fall into, myself included. So the first agency experience I ever had was actually really good. I then worked with like 10 more agencies and all of them were terrible. And this is the exact process of what happened. So reading directly from $100 million leads, step 1, they got me excited about all the new leads they would bring. Step 2, I'd go through an onboarding process that felt valuable and sometimes was. Step 3, they assigned their best senior rep to my account. Step 4, I saw some results. Step 5, they moved my senior rep to the newest customer. Step 6, a junior rep starts managing my account. My results suffer. Step 7, I complain. Step 8, the senior rep would come back once in a while to make me feel better. Step 9, the results still never got back to where they were before, and I'd eventually cancel. Step 10, I'd search for another agency and repeat the cycle of insanity. Step 11, for the zillionth time, start wondering why I wasn't getting results like the first time. So how do you decide if using an agency is right for you? First off, do you have more money or more time? If you don't have any money, then you gotta learn it, and it's gonna take time. And you know what? That's part of life. Usually you master one platform, you get some success, you get a little bit of cash flow, and then you can more quickly pay to learn the other ones. You pay down your ignorance test faster. If you have the money, then for me, it's always worth paying down that debt. And that process is how we approached LinkedIn, how we approach podcasts, how we approach paid ads, all of them. I run the same playbook. When it comes to building a strong personal brand, you need to build influence, not just have views. So here's how to do that. We got 32.7 million views on YouTube this month. Here's how. So I posted 35,000 pieces of content this year. We did a $100 million book launch for $100 million money models in 72 hours. So 3 days, we did over $100 million in sales. The issue that most people struggle with is that you're making not enough content, number one, and the types of content that you're making are not attracting the types of customers you want. The promise that I have for you today is that I will show you a framework that I have called SPCL, like special if you want, but it's how to build influence, rather than how to get as many views as possible or anything like that. All right, but it's a 4-part framework and I want to break down each of the 4 components for you so that you can think about how you want to approach making content, all right, and building a brand in general. SPCL, these are letters and hopefully overhead cam works all right. So SPCL. So what do these actually stand for? All right, so number 1 is status. And this is why you hear me talk about proof so much. But how do you define status from an operational perspective? For those of you who are new to the channel, I like to operationalize things, meaning like I like to look at objective reality and describe how you would see it with your eyes, rather than try and put a whole bunch of like emotional words around stuff, because these are like that type of language is what confused me for a very long time when I was coming up. And it was only after I started defining things by what I could see, what I could observe, did reality feel like sharper, more crisp to me, and my ability to predict what was going to happen next increased by a lot. And so this is why I talk in this way. So how do I find status? So status is someone who controls reinforcers in a given environment. So that's a little bit fancy word, but fundamentally, if you control the good stuff that people want, then you will have status no matter what it is, right? And so the simplest example I have is like, if you go to a bar and it's a busy bar and there's a bartender and you have to get the bartender's attention in order to get a drink or booze, that guy in that moment has status. He controls a scarce resource, right? But if that guy walks out of the bar, no longer controlling that scarce resource, he does not have the same status or even close to it, right? Like outside of the bar, he's not getting tips every single 5 seconds when he like moves his hands a little bit and like says something nice. People aren't waving money at him as he walks in the street. Of course not. It's because he has status in one condition and he doesn't have another. Now, what's interesting about all 4 of these elements I'm going to break down, they all can work independently, but the idea is that you want all 4 to be stacked together. And this is what gives you the most influence, right? So like any of these 4 on their own would give you influence. Like that bartender, if he just says that, he would have some level of influence. And I'll give you a different example of this. If a kid inherits money, right, they're going to have status, right? Like if you have money, even if you didn't earn it, even if you didn't anything, if you have money, you will have some degree of status because you control something other people want, period. That's how it works, all right? But would that kid who has money have the same status as a kid who has money who also gave you, 10 different crypto coin picks that all popped off, right? Well, if he gave you 10 different picks and you followed them and they all popped off, how much more influence would that person have over them saying, hey, you should put money in this, or hey, you should, give me money for XYZ, or whatever it is. Obviously, I'm talking money because I'm a business person first, but like think about how much more influence version 2 would have with just 2 of those things versus version 1. That's the difference. But if you have all 4, that's when you become Super Saiyan. So status is number 1, so you control scarce resources. Power is number 2. I would say if I had to only pick one, I would pick power, and I'll explain why. Power comes from something in the behavioral dynamics world called say-do correspondence. What that means is if I say something and then you do it, and then a good thing occurs, a reinforcing event happens afterwards, you are more likely to comply with a following request, right? So said differently, I gave you the example of the guy who says, hey, here's 10 stock picks, you buy them, and then a good thing happens. The thing goes up. Great. So that person has status and power, which is why they are more influential than the trust fund kid who just has money. And so to the same degree, for many of you who are trying to make content, one, it's like, okay, status, I want to demonstrate that I control a scarce resource that some people might want, right? And so what makes this a little bit more muddied is that sometimes one event can check multiple boxes. And so I'll give you a simple example. When we launched the book, we did 100 million plus in sales. That in and of itself, me having money from the event gives me status. Me saying, hey, you can launch stuff in this way gives me credibility, right? Because I show that I have an event, I have something that has happened as a result of me doing it that gives me third-party credibility. There's something that you can observe with your eyes, right? The reason that my ads do well when I have my $10 million building behind me is like, oh, well, that's hard to fake, right? And so you have credibility there. And so one event, like selling a company, can give you money, it can give you credibility, and then if I give people directions on how they can do things that are similar, and then good things happen, then all of a sudden you get power. And then the last is likeness. I know I'm skipping around, but hey, we're live, we're having a good time. All right, and so credibility is number 3. And I'm gonna go in more detail on all these. All right, and then likeness. So what's likeness? So likeness is that you see some people say relatability. This can be both psychological in terms of you share similar values with this person. You like their vibe, whatever you want to say, right? You like their behavior set, and that behavior set matches to people who have been positive in your life in the past, or they literally just look like you, right? So like Layla and I could talk about the exact same stuff, but she's a girl, and so she's gonna have more chicks who follow her than me. And for the few ladies who do follow me, I appreciate you, I really do. But I have like an 89% male audience. And so maybe it's because of the topic, but I would think, at my onset, I think, oh, it's because I talk about money and I talk about business, that's why I have a more male audience. But Layla, I think, is like 54% female. And she talks about almost exclusively money and business. Obviously, she talks about some mindset stuff too. But I say this to say, okay, if we have these 4 things, and these are the things that create influence, and I would define influence as high likelihood of compliance with requests. So what does that mean? So if I say, hey, grab my new book, or I say, hey, come to this webinar, or, hey, I'm going live, like come check it out, or hey, you should come to a workshop, whatever it is, right? You make some sort of solicitation, and it could be like or subscribe, it doesn't matter. Like there's levels of how quote big of an ask something is. If anybody's played like a video game, it's like you have like a role for like Dungeons and Dragons, and it like depends on how charismatic, how much influence you have, how high of a role, or how low of a role rather, you'd need in order to be successful with the request. Right? And so if you want to stack that stat for you, then if you want to min-max your influence, if you will, then you want to stack all 4 of these things. Okay, you're like, okay, I think I'm following with this. So how does this relate to content? So first off, starting from the back, likeness, I think so much more of it is just like, just be you. There's 0 ROI in trying to be or act in a way that is different than who you are. It's a relatively trite message, but like most people are NPCs. Most people say pre-recorded scripts. They look at like the 4 different outfit, combinations that exist for different kind of mental stereotypes. It's like, oh yeah, guy who loves barbecue and craft beers. Oh yeah, that's that archetype. I'm just gonna be that archetype. Or you've got like hipster bro who likes hipster shit, right? Or you've got like